I believe this is a historic moment. Today could have been the end of hope on this issue, but now we are starting a new chapter of hope.
The decision today is not only on Iran's nuclear program, but it is much, much more than this for the entire world, and we all know that this is very much needed in these times.
July 2015. Iran and the international community have finally said yes. After 12 years of negotiations and extreme tension, Tehran agrees to place its nuclear program under supervision. In exchange for a lifting of the sanctions which are strangling its economy. Iran is at the center of current conflicts in the Middle East, and this one event could change both the country's internal structure as well as its relations with the rest of the world. Diplomacy, economy, domestic politics. The pack has been completely reshuffled. But the conclusion of this deal does not guarantee its success. The story of the shockwave it has produced is not just an Iranian story. It is also Middle Eastern, American, and European. It's a story which concerns us all. Tehran, September 2015. Nothing has changed since the accord of the 14th of July. None of the economic sanctions weighing down on the country have yet been lifted, and won't be for several months. The time it will take to implement the mechanisms put in place between Iran and the international community in Vienna. It will take time to turn around the Iranian economy. A lot of time. Impoverished by years of sanctions and decades of poor public policy, 40% of the population live under the poverty line. The unemployment rate, officially estimated at 11%, is probably closer to 30%. The country is practically on its knees.
این 12 سال فشار اقتصادی ناشی از تحریم‌های ظالمانه کمتر از 8 سال جنگ به ما خسارت نزده. خسارت اقتصادی، خسارت به رشد و توسعه، خسارت به ظرفیت‌های ارتقاء کشور و خسارت به ظرفیت‌های انسانی.
در 10 سال گذشته در اقتصاد ایران کسری سرمایه‌گذاری عظیمی اتفاق افتاده. الان که من با شما صحبت می‌کنم بین 400 تا 450 میلیارد دلار کسری سرمایه‌گذاری وجود داره در ایران.
دنیا به اقتصاد ما نیاز داره. کسایی که تو اقتصاد انرژی کار کردن، حتی اقتصاد کشاورزی، اقتصاد صنعتی، تو این مدت مطالعه کردن کشور ما رو و تشنه همکاری هستن. نگران اینن که در حقیقت این اثرات تحریم باعث این بشه که کارها با تأخیر انجام بشه.
Well aware of the huge needs of the Iranian economy, ministers and company directors have been flocking weekly to Tehran. Their aim is simple, to forge the closest ties they can in the lead-up to the lifting of sanctions. Germany got in first. As early as the 20th of July, less than a week after the agreement was signed, the Vice-Chancellor and Minister of the Economy, Sigmar Gabriel, is already in Tehran.
Das Interesse der deutschen Wirtschaft und auch der iranischen Wirtschaft an der Wiederbelebung der Zusammenarbeit ist groß. Die Vorteile werden auf beiden Seiten liegen.
Germany is hoping to quickly establish itself as Iran's main business partner, just as it was before the economic sanctions. In late September, the French make their entrance. Stéphane Le Foll, the French Minister of Agriculture and government spokesman travels to Tehran with 132 French leaders of industry, brought together by the MEDEF, France's largest employer federation. If you're hoping to penetrate the Iranian market, you have to know how to flatter your new friend and potential business partner.
Il y a entre la France et l'Iran beaucoup de choses qui ont eu lieu pendant le passé, qui ont été aussi structurantes même jusqu'à aujourd'hui, mais que nous avons une responsabilité collective, c'est de construire l'avenir.
Il y a donc beaucoup de choses à faire, ensemble, travailler dans le respect qui vous est dû, dans le respect aussi d'une grande culture dont témoigne le prestige dans notre pays de vos œuvres, de votre création et en particulier de votre poésie.
In this new complex game of economic diplomacy Iran style, Ali Ahani, the Islamic Republic's ambassador in France, is a cornerstone. As the linchpin in dealings between Tehran and Paris, he's particularly courted by French industrialists.
Bonjour, monsieur l'ambassadeur. Ah, bonjour. Quel plaisir de vous voir ici. Ça va très bien. Je me permettrai de venir vous voir à Paris parce que nous avons un certain nombre d'accords importants à signer.
Très bien. Je vous président de la société Elysee. Ah, Elysee, vous êtes bien actif ici, hein? Vous avez entendu qu'on était actif? C'est plutôt bon signe alors.
Je voudrais vous présenter Jean-Pierre, qui est le nouveau président de la FIEV.
Ah, très heureux.
Merci. Nous sommes prêts à démarrer dès que cela sera possible.
Bon, c'est vous même avant si on préparer le terrain.
Voilà, exactement. Absolument. Merci.
Like his counterparts in the MEDEF, Vincent Papet, Middle East director of the public works company Eiffage, hopes to secure an initial project in Iran this year. And following the signing of the accord on the 14th of July, things have been speeding up. It was in December 2013 that he first started making trips to Tehran. Since then, with the aid of his Iranian partner, he's managed to clear a path through the labyrinth of intermediaries and business facilitators. It's a complicated task. Eiffage, which wasn't present in Iran before the sanctions, is a new player in the country.
Là, je vais bâtir un plan d'action avec mon partenaire, puisque nous avons quand même, à travers tous ces rendez-vous, nous avons eu rendez-vous officieux, rendez-vous officiels, identifier 4 à 5 projets. Je veux que de son côté, il vérifie que ces projets sont déclarés prioritaires au niveau du gouvernement. On va faire un débriefing d'ici 4 à 5 semaines. On a le temps, mais il faut à la fois aller assez vite pour préempter certains projets.
In the hope of winning one of these 4 or 5 contracts, Vincent Papet has to identify the right channel of decision-making within the Nizam, the Iranian system, which consists of a myriad of politico-economic entities, both public and semi-public.
بین 65 تا 70% اقتصاد ایران متعلق به بخش عمومیه، یعنی هم دولت و هم نهادهای خاص، و اینها همه بخش‌های بسیار بزرگ تو اقتصاد ایران هستن که تحت کنترل حکومت یا دستگاه‌های شبه نظامی و دستگاه‌های خاص هستن.
At the heart of this system reigns the Army of the Guardians of the Islamic Revolution. Founded in 1979 along with the creation of the Islamic Republic, this institution has become Iran's most powerful military and security organization. The regime's Praetorian Guard, a state within the state. After the war Iran fought against Iraq between 1980 and 1988, the Revolutionary Guard, the famous Bazdaran, started to infiltrate every structure of the economy. This trend grew in the new millennium, when the international sanctions forced foreign companies to leave the country. With the lifting of sanctions on the horizon, the government wants to limit the Revolutionary Guard's influence in order to attract foreign investors.
اونا به تدریج باید کارهایی که دستشونه تحویل بدن و تمام کنن، ولی کار جدید رو ما ترجیح نمیدیم به دولتی ها بدیم. نه فقط نظامی ها، به شرکت های دولتی هم ترجیح نمیدیم کار بدیم. ترجیح ما این است که کار رو به بخش خصوصی بدیم. اولویت ماست.
نمیدونم که چطور میشه کاملا پرهیز کرد از این. برای اینکه مالکیت شرکت ها اولا کاملا پیچیده شده وضعیتش در ایران، ولی اگر ما بتونیم سهم بخش خصوصی در اقتصاد ایران رو در آینده افزایش بدیم، خود به خود سهم دستگاه‌های شبه دولتی کاهش پیدا کرد در اقتصاد. این به نظر من بهترین راه حله.
For the moment, the Revolutionary Guard and other semi-public entities are still dominating the decision-making process in Iran.
Là, je vais entrer dans une phase où j'accède à des milieux un petit peu plus fermés, où les choses se discutent, je dirais, en tête-à-tête avec les autorités et d'une manière assez concrète et confidentielle. Je n'en dirai pas beaucoup plus, mais on est obligé de passer par les pièces maîtresses du système.
Elles sont difficiles à identifier, les pièces maîtresses?
Assez difficile, puisqu'en fait, les pièces maîtresses sont toujours dans l'ombre.
Vincent Papet is heading to a confidential meeting with one of these famous linchpins, a former member of the Pasdaran and hero of the war against Iraq in the 1980s, who's now become a businessman, an expert in urban development and public transport. He should be able to help the French industrialist get a foot in the Iranian market.
C'était productif, commandez-vous?
Oui, on a vu certains dignitaires, donc les projets aujourd'hui sont mis en avant, sont ciblés et maintenant c'est à nous de jouer, de montrer qu'on est réactif puisqu'on nous a témoigné une confiance, donc à nous de nous montrer dignes de leur confiance.
While foreign industrialists are waiting in the wings for the economic sanctions to be lifted, Iranian members of parliament prepare to debate the accord of the 14th of July. For the agreement can only be implemented if the Iranian parliament approves it.
تحریک وندی شرمن دیرو اعلام کرده که تمام خواسته های آمریکا رو تأمین میکنه.
اقتصادی، فرهنگی و امنیتی
رایگیری مشارکت بفرمایید. پایان رایگیری تصویب شد.
Despite the vehement opposition of ultra-conservative factions, the Majlis, the Iranian parliament, votes to adopt the accord by a large majority. It's a new political victory for President Hassan Rouhani and his allies on the nuclear issue. Having first stood as a presidential candidate in June 2013, this moderate conservative had made the conclusion of this accord one of the big promises of his campaign, and he found massive support among the Iranian people who elected him at the first round.
تایید مجدد کردند و گفتند که ما همچنان اصرار داریم که در واقع مسئله کشور از طریق مذاکره حل بشه و مایل نیستیم که با دنیا، اروپا و امریکا وارد در واقع چالش‌هایی بشیم که به کشورمون آسیب میزنه، به سیاست‌هامون آسیب میزنه، به منافع ملیمون آسیب میزنه.
Hassan Rouhani is a pure product of the Iranian regime. A close collaborator of Ayatollah Khomeini, the founder of the Islamic Republic, he was first elected to parliament in 1980 and for a long time presided over the Defense Committee, before directing the nuclear negotiations from the early 2000s onwards. He is also a pragmatist. When he decided to stand in the presidential election, he first made sure that the current supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, would give him the authority to enter into negotiations with the West. For Iran is above all a theocracy. The supreme leader, whose position is for life, is the real master. His religious prerogative trumps the presidential's electoral authority.
Pourquoi est-ce que les Iraniens ont accepté de négocier? Ma conviction est que les sanctions les ont poussés extrêmement fortement à négocier. Alors les sanctions, ce n'est pas toujours une bonne procédure, bien sûr, mais enfin là, ça avait tellement de conséquences sur leur propre niveau de vie, appelons un chat, qu'avec en plus l'élection du président Rouhani, ça a permis la bascule.
There is another reason why Hassan Rouhani and the supreme leader wanted this agreement. This is the memory of the terrible events of 2009, when the so-called Green Movement, which shook the Islamic Republic to its core, was murderously repressed. Following the highly disputed re-election of ultra-conservative President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad in June 2009, the Iranian people took to the streets to reject the result. The repression orchestrated by the Revolutionary Guard and their militias was of unprecedented violence. Mobile phone footage of the death of Neda, a young philosophy student, went viral around the world. But the regime did not weaken. Ahmadinejad remained in office until he was succeeded by Hassan Rouhani in June 2013. The Iranian authorities feared that the economic crisis the country had been suffering for over 10 years might favor the emergence of a new protest movement. A nuclear agreement in exchange for the lifting of sanctions now appeared to be vital. Yet this consensus at the highest echelons of the state has a quite relative reach. For the supreme leader and the ultra-conservatives supporting him, no future opening up of the country can be allowed to change the nature or identity of the Islamic Republic. At Tehran's Great Mosque, Friday prayers provide an opportunity for the regime's hardliners to get their views heard.
وقتی می‌نشینن با شما بهبهو چهچه حرفایی میزنن که شما خوشحال بشید وقتی چشم شما رو دور می‌بینن دستاشون رو به دندان می‌گردن از فرط خشمشون
Le guide de la République islamique a pour fonction de défendre la République islamique et ses valeurs essentielles, qui sont notamment la résistance à l'impérialisme américain, etc. Ces valeurs-là, il les défend. Ensuite, et c'est ça, l'accord du 14 juillet était important, il sait que pour les défendre, il faut quelquefois faire des concessions pour être plus fort. D'où l'accord sur le nucléaire et l'acceptation de l'ouverture de la porte. Mais on n'ouvre pas n'importe quelles conditions. Et donc lui affirme effectivement, c'est son métier, de résister et non pas de marcher. Il y a une certaine crainte que l'invasion culturelle américaine ne domine l'Iran et ne fasse s'effondrer de l'intérieur la République islamique. Que valent les États-Unis? Est-ce que c'est un partenaire sérieux? Méfiez-vous des États-Unis, qui font tout et le contraire. Qui devaient apporter la paix en Irak et en Afghanistan, ils ont apporté la discorde et la guerre civile. Donc méfions-nous de cet allié. Ne soyons pas naïfs.
Barely 3 weeks after the vote by Parliament, the alliance of circumstance which President Rouhani had established with the supreme leader and his collaborators blew apart. 5 Iranian journalists with reforming sympathies were accused of spying for the United States and were thrown into prison. Among them was Isa Sakhariz, a well-known figure of independent Iranian journalism. Aged 63, he had already spent 4.5 years behind bars, falling victim to the repression of the Green Movement in 2009, only being released in October 2013. we had to travel to the east coast of the United States to meet Isa Sakhari's son. The young man is a political refugee for whom a return to Iran is impossible.
Seeing my father on screen is really emotional because we haven't met in the past 12, 13 years. I received a call on my family, and they said that he started a full hunger strike where he's not going to take his medicine anymore, he's not eating, and he's been doing this for a couple of days. And he actually told my parents, you can either come and get me from the hospital or from the morgue. And they're really forcing him, and they want him to come out and confess about things he hasn't done.
It was really hard.
In February 2014, only a few months after being released from prison, Isa Sakhari received the French news channel France 24 into his home in Tehran. He was well aware that the very fact of expressing an opinion could put him at risk of arrest once again.
وقتی که هنوز زندان نفرستاده بودن من رو ولی ممنوع خروجم کرده بودن این بحث رو مطرح کرده بودم که من در یک زندان بزرگتری به اسم ایران زندانی هستم. اما خب میتونم بنویسم، مقاله بنویسم، از طریق فیسبوک دیدگاه‌های خودم رو مطرح کنم، مصاحبه بکنم، ولی میدونم که هر کدوم از این کارهای من برام یک پرونده هست و هر لحظه امکان داره که پرونده جدیدی رو باز کنن، به دادگاه ببرن، به خانه من بریزن و من رو دستگیر کنن و به زندان منتقل کنن.
As he feared, Isa Sakhari was arrested again in early November 2015, less than 4 months after the signing of the nuclear deal, for sharing intelligence with the enemy and an attempt to overturn the state.
Okay, be careful.
They came out with these false accusations, and then they took him again. So this wasn't part of the new government that was elected, but you have to understand that the Iranian government works in different ways. So you have the judiciary, which is under the supervision of the supreme leader, and then you have the power of the armed forces, who's again under his supervision. So the elected part of the government that was chosen to be elected was not involved in any case. But the dictatorship part of the government that has the judiciary and doesn't like people speak out their mind came and took him.
هیچ روزنامه‌نگاری به خاطر روزنامه‌نگاری دستگیر نشد. بعضی از اینا من اسم نمیبرم اتهامات اطلاعاتی و امنیتی دارن، یعنی ارتباطشون با عوامل ضد امنیتی داخل و خارج کشور.
فعالیت‌های سیاسی آقای سحرخیز مثل فعالیت‌های سیاسی من یا هر کسی در حد ما هیچ خطری برای هیچ کس نداره. ما هیچ حرفی عمیق‌تر یا جدی‌تر یا اطلاعاتی بیشتر از اون چیزی که حتی گاهی وقتا در تاکسی‌ها رد و بدل میشه بین مردم نمیزنیم.
Il y a un contrôle social de plus en plus fort parce que justement l'ouverture, elle est possible. Jusqu'avant, l'ouverture internationale n'existait pas, c'était un vœu pieux. Maintenant, c'est fait. Ce n'est plus du discours, c'est de la réalité. Et donc ceux qui sont opposés pour des questions idéologiques à l'ouverture américaine, à la liberté intellectuelle, à la liberté des femmes, tous ces gens-là se disent le danger est imminent. Et peut-être que dans 2-3 ans, les choses vont changer parce que l'accord du 14 juillet va amener une ouverture. On ne pourra pas résister. Donc tout de suite, bloquons le système pour qu'on n'aille pas trop loin.
Seriously weakened by his hunger strike and other health problems, Isa Sakhari is admitted to hospital in March 2016. He still does not know when he will be brought to trial. While in Tehran, the various factions remain at loggerheads, in Vienna, the mechanism set in action on the 14th of July 2015 keeps turning. In particular, inside the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency. This is the organism in charge of checking the whole negotiation process with Iran. For the accord to be fully implemented and concluded, the IAEA must first shed light on Iran's nuclear military capability. This is what's known as the PMD, or Possible Military Dimensions.
The IAEA had a mandate to uncover whether Iran had, in fact, tried to militarize its nuclear program, that is, to make a weapon. And we had said that we would not be able to move forward with a comprehensive agreement until Iran also resolved this discussion with the IAEA.
as most of the activities took place more than 10 years ago, it was not possible to reconstruct all the details. But as Iran and IAEA engaged to clarify the issues, especially after the July agreement between Iran and IAEA, we have better understanding of the whole picture of the activities of Iran in this field.
On the 2nd of December 2015, the IAEA gives its member states the final report on what exactly has been going on in Iranian nuclear power stations. The agency is quite categorical. Tehran did indeed try to produce a nuclear explosive device. This was, however, before 2003, and there have been no credible indications of such activities in Iran since 2009. This report is a first. Henceforth, the international community possesses proof that Iran did indeed try to arm itself with nuclear weapons, despite having always denied this. Will such a revelation be enough to bring the ongoing process to a halt?
We learned that the IAEA does not have full and complete information. Part of the agreement is that the Iranians themselves would provide the technical information, and of course to rely on them, who have repeatedly cheated throughout the years, is foolishness.
And here, this is a critical point. Unless we had 100% clarity about what Iran did achieve, then we can't have a baseline on which to judge their future progress. Unless we know for certain how far they went, then there's no way to know how far they need to go to get, say, for a nuclear weapon.
But in Vienna, the diplomats of the P5+1 group, the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council plus Germany, who negotiated the accord, see no reason why these revelations by the IAEA should alter the agreement of the 14th of July. A deal which has a different focus, that of controlling Iran's nuclear activities in the future.
The reason that we have had confidence in the agreement and continue to have confidence in the agreement is, as I said, it has the most intrusive verification, monitoring, and transparency measures of any arms control agreement in history.
C'est la raison pour laquelle nous avons pris nos précautions, et notamment ce qu'on appelle le snapback, c'est-à-dire si l'accord n'est pas respecté, il y a toute une série de mécanismes, eh bien, les puissances qui l'ont signé, enfin en tout cas du côté qui n'est pas iranien, peuvent revenir en arrière.
Marion Paradas represents France at the IAEA. With her counterparts from the P5+1, she's preparing for the upcoming meeting with the governors, the political organ of the agency, who have to approve the famous report. At the headquarters of the French delegation, she and her team review the situation the night before the vote. The text of the resolution is not yet to everyone's liking.
Les Russes et les Chinois ont fait une réunion jeudi après-midi conjointe avec 11 pays. Et c'est à l'occasion de cette réunion qu'est sortie leur remarque sur le
paragraphe D du préambule.
Voilà.
Et donc, qui est en fait lié à l'interprétation du TNP. C'est ce qui est invoqué comme...
Eux estiment que c'est une interprétation du TNP. Nous, on estime que c'est la citation des droits et obligations qui sont dans le TNP.
Il faut qu'on soit quand même vigilant à cette réouverture de ce paragraphe du préambule. Donc on va voir ce que pensent nos partenaires.
Je pense qu'avec Washington, Paris est vraiment... Très ferme. En plus, on a intérêt à ne pas modifier la résolution, à pas rentrer dans... Si on commence à rentrer dans celui-là, pourquoi pas dans un autre?
The French and Americans agree that this mustn't lead to a modification of the NPT, the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, the general framework used for the Iranian affair. Otherwise, the entire process launched on the 14th of July could be derailed. The next morning, the Council of Governors meeting begins. hours of discussions, the Council of Governors finally and unanimously adopts the report presented by the IAEA.
I'm Homa Elysee from Press TV. Would you assess that there is now a positive atmosphere or an atmosphere of trust between Iran and the agency?
The trust is very much needed, and I believe trust can be built only through accumulation of facts. Continuation of full complete cooperation will contribute to overcome the mistrust that existed.
The question of Iran's nuclear military capability in the past is now permanently laid to rest. The IAEA can now concentrate on the following stage, making sure Tehran honors its commitments undertaken on the 14th of July. If it does, the international community can go ahead with lifting economic sanctions. One month later, this is confirmed. A reduction in the number of centrifuges and stock of enriched uranium, the dismantling of the heavy water reactor at Arak nuclear power station. The IAEA's conclusions are categorical. Iran has kept all its promises to the letter.
Today, multilateral and national economic and financial sanctions related to Iran's nuclear program are lifted in accordance with the JCPOA.
این توافق تاریخی استوار و منصفانه است. خواست همه خواستهای همه را تأمین می‌کند و اجرای مناسب آن گامی کلیدی در کمک به بهبود صلح، ثبات و امنیت منطقه‌ای و بین‌المللی خواهد بود.
With the lifting of sanctions, Tehran gains access to some of its assets frozen overseas, something like 27 billion euros worth out of a total of 90 billion, which it can now inject back into its economy. So that's that. Iran is ready to open up to the world, and the people are hopeful they can benefit from this sooner rather than later.
زیاد میگن که مثلا اوضاع ایران بهتر میشه، تعلیمات از اوضاع ایران بهتر میشه.
بهتر میشه دیگه. به نظر من از لحاظ رفاهیات به هر حال خدمات برای کار، مخصوصا کار یه معضلی بود، ولی الان به نظر من برای کار اینا خوب میشه، برای آینده جوونا خوب میشه. ما امیدواریم دیگه، به هر حال با امیدواری داریم زندگی میکنیم، ان شاءالله که روز به روز بهتری رو ببینیم. وقتی این جامعه به هر حال ما به خاطر چی هستیم؟ به خاطر اینکه همین امیدواری ما رو نگه داشته دیگه.
Avec la levée des sanctions, les choses bougent déjà. Là, déjà actuellement, à partir de la semaine prochaine, il n'y aura pas de place dans les hôtels pour faire les réservations. Et 3 ou 4 grands hôtels, immédiatement, ont été assaillis parce que les délégations reviennent.
Voilà, c'est l'étape qu'on attendait. Maintenant, on nous permet je dirais, d'activer d'autres partenaires et d'avoir un agenda un peu plus précis. Les grands investissements d'infrastructures, ça va encore prendre du temps à se mettre en place, les fonds d'investissement sont quand même pas tous encore en place. Les